talk to you about tonight. And I want to start off by asking you a question. And the question I have for you is, do you really, really want it? That's right. I want you to think about whatever it is that you're pursuing right now, or whatever it is that is really alluring to you right now, whatever it is that you think that you want. And I don't know what that thing is for you. Maybe you've been, lured and attracted, and you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. You're working a regular 9 to 5, you have a career, and you're thinking about becoming a business owner, right? It's just something that you're thinking about. Or maybe you're sort of looking on at other people that have families and they've gotten married and they're having children. And so now you're starting to be allured and you're starting to be drawn into the idea of being married and having children. Or maybe perhaps you have been in business now and you're wanting to get to the next level. Maybe you're trying to get to the multi-6-figure mark, or maybe you're trying to get to 7 figures. But most of us, if we're driven in life, there's something that we're starting to really be allured by, something that we're saying to ourselves, you know what, I really, really want that. And so I want to tell you this, listen, be careful what you wish for. And so here's what I realized, that all too often, many of us, we're more in love with the idea. You see, we're often in love with the thought, the idea of becoming an entrepreneur. We're in love with the thought, the idea of growing a family. We're in love and we're, really infatuated with the thought of going back and getting the master's degree and getting the next degree. We're being allured and we're in love with the thought of getting to the 7-figure mark. But the question is, do you really, really want it? And let me tell you something, when you really, really want it, you go beyond just having great conversation. You go beyond just being allured and just simply talking about it and thinking about it. And what you actually decide to do is actually roll your sleeves up and do the work. And so here's what I find, that many people who are just talking about all the things that they believe that they want, guess what? They don't really want it. And so, Andy, you said, well, how can you make such a claim? What do you mean they don't really want it? Because here's what I know. It's not what you say, but it's actually what you do. And so there's a lot of people who think that they want something, but they have no idea as to what it's going to require of them in order to accomplish it. In other words, they're thinking about all these things that they want, but they haven't considered the price. They haven't considered the sacrifice. They haven't considered the commitment that's going to be required in order for them to realize their goals and their dreams. They haven't realized the commitment that's going to be required for them to actually publish the book. They haven't thought about the commitment that's going to be required for them to start the business, get the degree, to get out of debt, to have the family, whatever it is that they really want. They think it's what they want, but the reality of it is, guess what? They don't really want it. And I know that that's a bold statement, but I can tell you right now, people would judge you, and your goals and your dreams are going to be realized not based off of what you say, not based off of what you believe that you want, but more based off of your action, the work that you're willing to put in. And so I was just thinking about this. It's just last week I had the opportunity to fly up to Tallahassee, Florida, and I was blessed and fortunate enough to be invited to be able to be the keynote speaker for the master's hooding ceremony at Florida State University. So these are all the students who are graduating in spring out of the College of Business that were graduating with their master's degree. And so I was just blessed and fortunate to be invited to be the actual keynote speaker for that ceremony. And so I had an opportunity to meet up with one of my very good friends and fraternity brothers. He's very successful. As a matter of fact, when I fly into Tallahassee, and as soon as I get off of that actual airplane and I go through the actual security, the point of no return, as I like to call it, right? Where you're going past the security checkpoint and I'm making my way out to ground transportation. One of the very first things that I see in the airport is a full live billboard of my good friend and fraternity brother on the wall. I mean, a massive billboard. And, I normally take a quick picture of the billboard and I text it to him and I say, hey, man, I love being greeted by your billboard as soon as I fly up to Tallahassee. And so he's having massive success right now. He's an attorney, he's a lobbyist, and him and I were having a conversation as we were sitting down over dinner. And the conversation that we were having was that he was talking about how we were both talking about how difficult it is to find, quality team members, people that you're going to bring on your team, people who are going to perform, people who are not going to just have great conversation, people who are willing to pay the price and so forth. And what he was talking about is that, there are so many people that are sort of drawn and attracted to him that want to become part of his team. And there's one particular individual that a person that we know mutually, and we're sort of just talking about. And the conversation that we're having is that, how a lot of people would look on at his business. And what they're doing is they're looking on his business and they're thinking to myself, my goodness, you go into the airport, you see this massive billboard, you say when you turn on the television and you're watching, some of the major news stations, Fox News and so forth, you see him on the television station making commentary and being a repeated guest, not a one-time guest, but a repeated guest. You go to these major high-end functions, and you watch that as they're giving away awards, and you watch them call out his name, and they're giving him awards about the major and significant impact that he's made in his industry. You go to high-end fancy events, and you're finding these very high-end events, and you're going around the room and you're looking at different people who are sponsors for the event, and you see that his law firm is a sponsor for the event, or his law firm has a table at the event, or you're walking across on campus at Florida State University, and you're seeing that they actually have a statue of him, or they have a brick in the wall with his name and the law firm name, and the list goes on and on and on. And so what happens is people are looking on at his life, and they're looking on at the level of success that he's had. And they're looking at what I like to refer to as the highlight reel, right? And so the highlight reel is when you're looking at clips and pieces of someone's life, and you're looking at all the clips and pieces that have all the glitter and all the gold and all the special effects on them. So you're looking at the person's billboard, you're looking at television interviews, you're sitting there looking at their name being called out for major awards. But here's what most people don't realize: with every highlight reel comes some unedited footage, and that footage is the real uncut footage. That's the real deal. That's where the real story is. You see, the story's not in the highlight reel. The highlight reel has been thought out. The highlight reel has been edited. The real story and what it really takes is in the raw footage. And so what we're talking about is some of his raw footage, and we're talking about, how many people are sort of allured to that? And they come in, and when they come into his organization, what they discover is that there's really work that goes into all these amazing things that they saw on the surface. And so what he's able to do very quickly is weave out the people who thought that they wanted to be part of his organization, people who thought that they wanted to live the life that he has, people who thought that they wanted to be on the team, only to realize that many of them would end up flaking. Why? Because they didn't realize the amount of work that was required. You see, the uncut footage of his life, as I was done in the rest of the day, I flew in and they gave me a campus tour, and following the campus tour, they set up a time for me to actually sit down and eat with the students. Then I was escorted back to my hotel. I had 1 hour to go ahead and change and get into my other suit. I was picked back up. I was brought to deliver the actual keynote. Straight from the keynote, I was put into another vehicle to go to a private dinner. And then I didn't get an opportunity to connect with my fraternity brother until very late in the evening. But when I hit him up on the text message, he told me to meet him not at the restaurant, not at his house, where he was still in at the office. I'm talking about 10 o'clock at night. And so when I got there, I pull up in his office, and sure enough, I'm in there, and he's in the room and he's multitasking. What is he doing in his office? Number one, he's got some type of online course or whatever that he's completing. Number two, he's on a conference call with the client, and they're talking about some major deal that he's putting together. Number three, I also see him sending some text messages to some other people that are trying to set appointments and dates and so forth, and he's trying to carry a conversation on with me. And so I'm looking at all the things that are going on, and we were talking about, he said, Andy, man, he says, this is what people don't see. You see, they don't see when I'm in this office bright and early, 5 o'clock in the morning. They don't see the amount of conference calls. They don't see the amount of deals that I'm putting together. They don't see the amount of clients that I'm helping out. They don't see the times that we're processing paperwork and helping out with selling settlements and going through and reviewing contracts. He said they don't see when I'm putting in and clocking in the hours late night in the office, and my wife ends up giving me a call at 10:30 at night and say, hey, honey, I just want to let you know it's 10:30. I'm about to go to sleep, and you're still in the office, I don't know if you're coming home, but I'm calling you right now just to say good night. And by the way, the kids are already asleep. He's like, that's the stuff they don't see. And so here's where we come to the realization. You see, there's a lot of people who say that they want it, but here's what I could tell you right now. If they knew what it really took, if they really were willing to put in the time, the effort, the energy, that's where you begin to know. That's when you begin to really decipher between those who are simply having great conversation and those that really, really, really want it. And so I want you to think about whatever it is that you're pursuing right now, or whatever it is that you believe has your name on it. And I want to ask you the question, I mean, do you really want it, or are you just window shopping? Are you just in love with the idea, the thought of writing the book, the thought of having a business, the thought of getting to the 7-figure or multiple 6-figure mark, the thought of being married, the thought of being a good mother, a good father, the thought of getting out of debt? I mean, do you really want it, or are you just infatuated, or are you just allured? Are you just looking on at somebody else's highlight reel? And you're thinking that, you know what, that's something that I really want. And it's one of those things that you got to process. You got to think about it, because let me tell you that there's a clear distinction between those who are just simply having good conversation, who are being allured, who are just simply window shopping, who are giddy and excited about the thoughts and ideas, and those that really, really want it. You see, because those that really, really want it, it's rarely as sexy and as appealing and as cool as it appears to be on the surface. You see, a lot of times on the outside, when you look at success and when you look at people who are making things happen, it appears, for you women out there, I make the analogy, it appears to be a very fancy, elegant gown. And for the gentlemen who are out there, you know, it appears in many ways to be a tailor-made tuxedo suit. But you see, once you get closer to it, you realize that it's nothing more than a pair of overalls, and it's nothing more than just a bunch of work that's waiting there for you. And so it's rarely as exciting and as cool as it appears to be in the highlight reel. And so I can very quickly decipher between those who really want it and those who just think that they want it, because all I've got to do is just examine their actions. And so when I think about somebody who really wants it, I can always think back to, you know, a gentleman that I got to mentor years ago, a gentleman by the name of Rappel, who was looking to get, you know, involved in real estate investing. And this is many years ago. And I remember how many times he would call me a week. I mean, Rappel would call me over and over and over again. And when I didn't pick up the phone, he just continued to call. And every single time he called me, he'd be there on the phone like a sponge, just ask me for questions. And I can think about how every time that you would think that this gentleman had an obstacle, he would find a way to break through the obstacle. So he didn't have a car. And so that didn't stop him, because he found a way to use his bike and ride his bicycle to be able to maneuver around, ride his bicycle to go to the library to use a computer. He'd ride his bicycle to actually go around and look at properties. I think about the fact that he didn't have a computer, and yet and still that didn't stop him, because he would go to the public library in order to access a computer. He didn't have internet access, but he didn't let that stop him, because he knew where he could find some internet access over at the library. And so he didn't have the resources, and so he didn't let that stop him, because he knew that if he made the right contact, the right connections, that he could use something called OPM. And for those of you who understand that terminology, it's called other people's money. And so when you looked at Rappel's life, and when you looked at his actions, and when you looked at the way that he showed up on a daily basis, you looked on and you said, my goodness, that is somebody who's not just saying that they want it. That is somebody who's willing to pay the price. That is somebody who understands that what it appears to be on the highlight reel is not really what it is in real life. Because the highlight reel doesn't show you the person who's riding their bicycle to go and look for the deals. The highlight reel doesn't show you the person who doesn't have the computer, who's going to the public library, who's sitting down waiting 20, 30 minutes waiting for a computer to become available. The highlight reel doesn't show you when that person is picking up the phone week after week and day after day and having to call up over and over and over again and hearing no after no after no. You don't see that in the highlight reel. Nah. You see, what you see in the highlight reel is the check. What you see in the highlight reel is when they're in the nice car. What you see in the highlight reel is when they're taking selfies from the airplane. What you see in the highlight reel is when they're taking pictures at the title company because they just closed the deal. What you see in the highlight reel is the after pictures. Yeah, that's what you see. Because here's what happened. Most people would never want to sit down and watch the real footage. Most people don't really want to know what it's going to take. And most people don't want to know what the locker room story is. The locker room, you know, one of my good players played in the NFL for 8 years. And he said, Andy, man, it's so funny. He says, when certain things goes out and it hits the media, he said, man, we've already hashed that out in the locker room way before the media even discovers about it. He said when the media is covering something that happened in the professional football or professional baseball world, he said, man, we've already dealt with that. We've already had to address it. We already had the hard locker room conversation around whatever that issue is. And so the real lesson is in the actual locker room. It's in those locker room conversations. It's in those conversations that you have when you close the door, the conversations that you're having with just your family, the conversations you have in private. And the real story is not when you ask the person, how many houses do you have? How many cars do you have? How much money you make? The real story is, tell me that time when you cried yourself to sleep at night. Tell me that time when you got evicted. Tell me that time when you lost your house. Tell me that time when you had to sit at the kitchen table with your wife and decipher which bill you were going to pay that month. Tell me that time when you had to dig deep and figure out how you're going to push forward on your goals and your dreams. Tell me that time when you found yourself wanting to quit. Tell me that time when you did quit, but you just didn't tell everybody, and then you change your mind and you decide to get back on the saddle and do it again. Tell me that time when you were the secretary, when you were also the receptionist, when you were also the sales manager, when you were also the marketing guy, when you're also the marketing woman. Tell me that time when you were doing everything in your business and you were responding as if you were your own secretary. Tell me that time. Because that's where the real lesson is. That's what it really takes. That's what you got to know. That's what you got to make the decision. Is this what I want to do? Is this for me? Do I really want it? Or am I just am I just really just into the idea? Am I just fascinated with the thought? I tell you, I've sort of seen mentors on both spectrum. I've been around highly successful people that won't give their telephone number to absolutely anyone. And I've also been around highly successful people that will basically give their telephone number to practically everyone. And I tell you, for whatever level of success I've accomplished in my life right now, that oftentimes I don't have a problem giving my telephone number out. And the reason why is because I know that 9 out of 10 people will never call. You see, 9 out of 10 people are caught up in that conversation or the interaction that they had with me in that moment. And 9 out of 10 of them are excited and they believe and they were allured by whatever it is that they saw in that moment. Maybe I delivered a keynote. Maybe they had an opportunity to see a YouTube video. Maybe they had an opportunity to read my book. Maybe they had an opportunity to listen to one of my CDs. Maybe they bought one of my take-home programs. Maybe they listened in to me on a webinar, teleseminar, whatever it is. They just got a little glimpse. They got to experience me just in some capacity. And in that moment, they got excited and they said, oh my gosh, I would love to connect with you and get some coaching. Oh my gosh, I'd love to connect with you and see if there's any way that we could work together. And what I've discovered is 9 out of 10 will never follow up. 9 out of 10 will never make the phone call. 9 out of 10 don't really want it. And because of that, I say no problem. And so I give them the telephone number. And they never seem to prove me wrong. And so I know as you're out there and you're thinking about whatever it is that you want to go after, I need you to be honest with yourself. And so stop fronting, as they say. Stop playing around with your goals and your dreams, and just make a decision. Just make a decision with yourself. And the question and decision, the thing you need to answer is, do I really want it? And if you really want it, then are you willing to pay the price? Because it's going to show up in what you do, not in what you say. And that's why when people who are really committed, people who are really serious, they can show you better than they can tell you. You see, and you want to get accustomed to telling people that, I can show you better than I can tell you. If I tell you, it'll be one thing, but if you could just stay connected with me, or if you could just continue to watch, but don't watch from a distance, watch closely, I can show you how committed I am. And you want to have that level of commitment when you're talking about going after your goals and your dreams, rather than having great conversation. I think about years ago, I had a gentleman knock on my door. And when I opened up the door, he was talking to me, and he was trying to sell me some magazines. And he was working for a company that, what they do is they bring, mostly young individuals between the age of, I don't know, maybe 18 to 20 something, early 20s. And they are sort of giving them, I guess, an opportunity to get out there and sell magazines, and they can get bonuses or whatever it might be. And when I began to have conversations with this young man, I discovered that the conditions in which he was working with this company was not the best conditions. The way that he was being treated, the way that he was being compensated. And so listening to his story and listening to what he said that he wanted, I wanted to see if there's anything I could do to help him out. And so I said, listen, man, if you're really trying to break away from this, if you're really looking for an opportunity, I don't really know you from Adam, but I've heard your story, and I would love to help you out, man. I'm going to open up my doors to you. And if you would like to, step away from this, once you settle those matters elsewhere, you're more than welcome to come in and live with me temporarily. Now, naturally, you're going to have to make sure that you find yourself a job. Naturally, you're going to have to make sure that you take responsibility and accountability for what you're trying to do. But anything that you're looking to do, I will help you with that. So if you're looking to go to school, I will help you to go to school. If you're looking to get a car or something, I will help you get a car. And so we had a conversation, and he expressed with me everything that he wanted. And I was convinced that that's what he wanted. But what happened is, once he moved in and I started to watch what he was doing, what I realized is that what he said that he wanted and what he was doing was not congruent. You see, he said he wanted to create a shift and a change. He said he wanted to take his life to the next level. He said he wanted to go to school. But when I looked at his actions, he wasn't necessarily fully committed. You see, he wasn't doing the things required to figure out what was available to him and where he could apply to go to school. He got a job, but then he wasn't really serious about making sure that he got to the job on time and making things happen. I was willing to help him out with whatever it is that he was willing to put forward. But what I realized was that he wasn't putting very much forward. And we came to the place where no hard feelings, but what I realized, and we had to have a conversation, that what you said you wanted and what you're doing is not congruent. So because of that, we have to cut ties. And so I wish you the best, but I can't help you because I can't help someone who's not willing to help themselves. And so I share that with you because we all have to be honest with ourselves. You see, when we're saying that, you know what, hey, I want this thing. And the question is, do you really want it? Because when you really want it, it goes beyond the conversation. You're willing to put in the time. You're willing to put in the effort. And most importantly, you're willing to pay the price. And so I want you to think about whatever it is that you believe has your name on it. Whatever it is that you believe that you're pursuing right now. I don't know what that thing is for you. Maybe you want to write the book. Maybe you want to start the business. Maybe you want to get out of debt. Maybe you want to get married. Maybe you want to have some children. Maybe perhaps you want to be able to leverage your gifts, your skills, your talents to make an income. You know, maybe you're thinking about making a significant career change. Maybe you've been looking on at somebody else's life and you've been looking at their highlight reel and you're saying, man, that looks really alluring. That looks really attractive. I want to do that for myself. And I want to ask you the question, do you really, really want it? And if you believe that you really want it, I want to invite you to have the real conversation, for you to look behind the curtain and look and realize and try to figure out what is it really going to take. And once you know what it's really going to take, then be honest with yourself and say, wait a second, do I really want it now that I know the price of admission? Because realize this, that everything that you want comes with it a price tag. And so you've got to just simply make the decision if you're willing to pay the price. And if you are willing to pay the price, then listen, just then do the work. I'm not going to put it past you that you can make it happen, but I just need you to decide up front, do you really, really want it? Now, here's one of the things that I know, that the people who are drawn to my messages, the people who resonate with my voice, those are the people who really do want it. I mean, you don't sit in and tune in and listening to messages like this unless you got a burning desire on the inside to make some things happen. And so the only thing I'm asking you to do is to look behind the curtain and find out what it's really going to take. Roll your sleeves up and by all means do the work. And of course, you know, this wouldn't be Andy Henriquez if I didn't end by telling you this. Show up for your lives, ladies and gentlemen, because if you don't, if you don't, nobody else will. All right. Well, listen, I am just so excited and I'm so grateful that you decided to be part of the Show Up for Your Life motivational movement, that you tuned in to the live stream and you are listening in via the conference call line. If you and I are not yet officially connected, I want to extend the invitation to you. It's very easy. You're going to simply go to showupforyourlife.com. Go look for the banner, put in your name and your email address. That's going to allow me to continue to send you motivational messages, videos, and content that I believe is going to help you to show up in your personal life and also to show up in your business. And not only that, but I want to make sure that by this point that you have gotten a copy of the Show Up for Your Life book. And if you have it, you want to do that right away. Just simply open up a web browser, type in showupforyourlifebook.com, type in showupforyourlifebook.com, and order your copy of the book. I want to make sure that you get that right away because I can't wait for you to be one of the next individuals that I get an email from, a Facebook post from, a social media post, say, oh my gosh, Andy, I've read your book and it has inspired me. It's changed my life. I'm telling you, the principles that I share in this book, as well as the exercises that are in the back of each chapter, not only are you going to be inspired by the stories that I share, you're going to have some practical exercises to help you implement the principles that I share. But the beautiful thing is that you're going to be able to leverage those principles and those exercises and be able to actually produce results in your life. You know, it's not just about being inspired. It's about producing results. It's about taking your life to the next level. It's about being able to look back a year from now and say, wait a second, I was here and now I'm here. And so if you're ready to get to that next level, if you're ready to show up, make sure you go to showupforyourlifebook.com and order your copy of the book. Now, like we always do, if you haven't already done so, I want to invite you to our private Facebook group. You can do that. Open up another browser, type in showupgroup.com, showupgroup.com. So for those of you who are listening in via the live stream and we're unable to sort of talk back and forth through the live stream, you can go ahead and post your comments, question, and feedback